What is a self? Well, you have to ask yourself what a self is. Now, how can I ask myself, if I'm not myself, what a self is? Or like, do I have to do like a self mitosis in order to ask myself what a self is? Well, how is it defined, Graham? How is it defined for that?
Kierkegaard begins this way. A human being is spirit. And this is the kind of language that some of you are making fun of. I like it. It's ironic and fun. A human being is spirit. But what is spirit? Spirit is the self. But what is the self? The self is a relation that relates itself to itself, or is the relations relating itself to itself in the relation. Now, the self is not the relation, but is the relations relating itself to itself. A human being is a synthesis of the infinite and the finite, of the temporal and the eternal, of freedom and necessity, in short, a synthesis. A synthesis is a relation between two. Considered in this way, a human being is not a self. That's a long joke. That shows you that philosophers don't share a sense of humor with everyone else, right?
I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I despise myself, and I repent in dust and ashes. Job 42, 5 and 6. So, specifically, the word repent there. So, does Job repent? And what is he repenting of?
That's right.
If supposedly he was a righteous and blameless man.
Now, the long joke that's hidden in that passage is that the self is not a substantial thing, but a deep relation. It's not even that relation, but the relating of a relation. Now let me try to explain what Kierkegaard is driving at. We are constituted in that paradoxical condition where we can do two of the things that we've tried to do throughout these lectures. Think in a quasi-utopian way about projecting from everyday life about what the world might be like, and even think about things as immense as infinity, and on the other hand, be absolutely stuck in the finite, final condition world of everything. So we're a synthesis between that. We're a synthesis between our desire for freedom and our recognition of brutal necessity.
He's trying to think of another way, if he were to express it poetically. Check this out. Or was there not a time also in your consciousess, my listener, when cheerfully and without a care you were glad with the glad, when you wept with those who wept, when the thought of God blended irrelevantly with your other conceptions, blended with your happiness but did not sanctify it, blended with your grief but did not comfort it, was not separate from it. And later, was there not a time when this, in some sense, guiltless life, which never called itself into account, which was never thought about but just lived, when this guiltless life vanished, did there not come a time when your mind was unfruitful and sterile, your will incapable of all good, your emotions cold and weak, when hope was dead in your breast, and recollection painfully clutched at a few solitary memories of happiness? And soon these also became loathsome, when everything was of no consequence to you, and the secular bases of comfort found their way to your soul, only to wound even more your troubled mind, which impatiently and bitterly turned away from them? Was there not a time when you found no one to whom you could turn, when the darkness of quiet despair brooded over your soul, and you did not have the courage to let it go, but would rather hang on to it, and you even brooded once more over your brooding? When heaven was shut from you and the prayer died on your lips, or it became a shriek of anxiety that demanded an accounting from heaven? But this was soon crushed by the thought that you were a nothing and your soul lost in infinite space. Was there not a time when you felt that the world did not understand your grief, could never heal it, could not give you any peace, that this had to be in heaven if heaven was anywhere to be found? And alas, it seemed to you that the distance between heaven and earth was infinite. And just as you yourself lost yourself in contemplating the immeasurable world, just so God had forgotten you and did not care about you. And in spite of all this, was there not a defiance in you that forbade you to humble yourself under God's mighty hand? Was this not so? And what would you call this condition if you did not call it death? And how would you describe it except as darkness?